Now, Jake Trotter.
Jake Trotter covers the Browns for ESPN. Welcome to the show, Jake.
Yes,
How
sir.
are you?
Yes, sir.
Good to be with
Yes,
you guys.
sir.
It's good to have you with us, Jake. When you first came here, obviously you had worked with Baker Mayfield before, and then you worked with him again here. How did he change during his time from college to starting in the pros to when he, and I don't know if you've spoken with him at all since he's been gone, but did he change a lot or no?
I think so, a little bit. I think that the turmoil that he had to deal with in Cleveland probably affected him a little bit. He really wanted to turn this place around. He wanted to turn the Browns around. Mm-hmm. And I think that along the way, maybe he lost himself a little bit. I think at the end, he definitely lost some of his confidence. I mean, you could feel that from the front office to the coaching staff to the locker room. There's just a loss of belief in Baker, and he had not dealt with that really in a long time, right? Maybe ever.
Right.
And I think he wanted to be a Brown for life. He wanted to be the guy that took Cleveland to a Super Bowl, but it just didn't work out for a number of different reasons.
Is he his own worst enemy in a way?
I think sometimes.
Yeah.
I think sometimes that bravado at Oklahoma played very well.
Right.
Planting the flag, all of that stuff. But when you're not winning, it doesn't play very well. And he wasn't winning here, except for a couple stretches in 2018 and 2020.
Yeah.
Jake, Kevin Stefanski, I look at his tenure here. There's been a track record of really high-name players kind of having, their rough way with him. We just talked about Baker. Jadeveon Clowney has some comments. Myles Garrett has had comments in the past. You got Jarvis Landry, you got Odell Beckham Jr., you even have Kareem Hunt. Is it a situation where Kevin is he the person to be a communicator, or is that an area that he gets people lost with, especially with big name guys and big personalities?
Are you saying is there a culture issue in Cleveland?
Well,
I think so.
Is that his personality, or was it just the circumstances with those players individually?
Well, I think a lot of the issues predate Kevin. I was here in 2019 with Freddie Kitchens. They had all kinds of wild stuff happening off the field that made it very difficult for that team to win on Sundays. Now, Kevin's style is not to get in your face. He is very, introverted in a lot of ways. I think he's a terrific football mind. I think he's a very good play caller despite some of the rough patches they've had. In 2020, when they had so much success, they weren't in the building. There wasn't some of the chemistry issues you had to deal with because everybody was at home on Zoom calls, right? Mm-hmm. You didn't have a lot of the interpersonal locker room issues that we've seen, bubble up at times under his tenure. But I think a lot of the things that did happen, it should never even matter who the head coach is. Like the Jadeveon Clowney, I'm not playing on first and second down. Like, there's got to be players in the locker room that are not going to tolerate that type of stuff, which you see with other NFL locker rooms. You haven't seen it enough with the Browns. Now, Kevin probably deserves some of the responsibility for the way that has gone, but it's not just him. It's above him, and it goes before he arrived here.
So I would say this, Jake. So you're right that the culture issue extends all the way to the top of the ticket, right?
Yep.
And really, if the culture is set from the top of the ticket down. Irrespective of that, Kevin is in control of the entire ship, right? If it's not coming from up top, he at least has to be the one to say, through these doors, my way or no way. And I think sometimes when he gets himself in trouble I don't think you can be, and I'm asking you, I don't think you can be successful as a coach in any sport and be hands off. I just don't see how that happens, right? Because there's always going to be people that buck the system. And somebody has to be there to be like, this is what's happening. And if you do, the consequences are, because if you don't shut it off when it starts, it just permeates to the rest of the group. Does Kevin understand that?
Well, I think that part of the problem in this particular case is that this is a collaborative effort. Kevin Stefanski is not Bill Belichick. He's not making all the decisions. Baldy Podesta is making decisions. The Haslam's are making decisions. Andrew Berry is part of this process. So, like the Jadeveon Clowney thing, I don't think that was up to Kevin to say, well, we're gonna cut him next week. We're not going to tolerate that. He's not going to play on first and second down in a game we have to have. The next week, he was in on the second series. And so if you're Perrion Winfrey and you see that, That's where you have culture issues.
That's a major problem. You know, like collaboration can be good to a point.
Right.
Right? You don't want the GM and the head coach to be MFing each other and not
Which
working
we've
together.
seen in Cleveland many
plenty of
times before.
But, I mean, the fact, like, it seems to me, you cover the team more than we do, you know, intimately. It seems like Jimmy Haslam is too involved. But ultimately, he's the owner. He can do whatever the hell he wants. But it seems like that, through all the problems since he's been here a decade, that's been consistently an issue, is that he's too involved. Is that really the case, or do we make more of that than it is?
I don't know if it's that he's too involved, but he is making the calls. I mean, the reason Deshaun Watson is on the Browns is because of Jimmy Haslam.
Right.
So you don't think Berry wanted him?
No, I'm not saying that. I think
Right.
it was a collaborative effort,
Yeah.
but Jimmy is the one who
pushed for
spearheaded
it.
that effort.
Okay, so let me.
He's the reason that Deshaun Watson's making $230 million, which is how they got Deshaun Watson in the first place. If they don't pony up to pay that kind of money, he's playing somewhere else.
Okay, so let's, and coaches and owners are always in adversarial positions. You go through this league, everybody has an opinion. The system that I see so far, the collaboration effort is not working, right? When do we change course to be like, I need somebody to run the program, right? Period, right?
Well,
and it's a difference between the owner and the coach. There's two different things, right? And the problem with the Browns, as I see it, is just this: when there are decisions and stances to be made that are entirely in the coach's purview, he refuses to do it for whatever reason, and basically fluffs it off on somebody else to do it.
Does he refuse, or does he not have the power?
Well, let's talk about the first issue you referenced. What's the difference between Baltimore and Pittsburgh and Cleveland? The biggest difference. They have incredible continuity there, from ownership to GM to head coach to quarterback. The Browns have not had that since they came back to the league in '99. And if you keep firing coaches and you keep firing coordinators and you keep changing quarterbacks, you're never going to get to the point where you want to get. So that's so I understand. So that's point one. But again, this is a collaborative effort. Kevin Stefanski is not the most powerful person in that building.
So Jake
and he's not going to be under the current system they
No,
have.
no, I agree with you, because I mean I'm just giving you my analysis as
Right.
I see it. But you're talking to a guy, so that came from Chicago, where you had the owner and the GM, Jerry Krause and Jerry Reinsdorf, in alignment, where you had Doug and Phil on the other side of it, that would dismiss what they were doing. And then you had the players that would, depend on what day the flavor was, would dismiss whoever, right? So that dynamic exists always, right? But it still can be managed. But it always requires a person at the helm. The reason Phil Jackson had success, because he managed it. He managed the expectations of everyone. And like, you knew that, I don't care what they say upstairs, this is what's happening down here. Somebody has to control the domain.
You want Kevin to be more heavy.
Yeah, he got to be, because
See, I wonder if he's allowed to be that heavy-handed.
the only way Kevin knows is if Kevin tries.
Because, like, I mean, the Clowney thing, I think, was an inflection
Oh,
point.
he'd
of the
have
season.
been gone that day.
So he had no power to get rid of.
I don't
So
think.
who did?
Well, I mean,
DePodesta?
yeah, I think if DePodesta said we're going to cut this guy, he'd have been cut.
So if Kevin can't go to DePodesta and say, I want this guy out of here?
I mean, he can, but it's not. I don't think that's Kevin's call to make.
Wow. So is there a chance, like, so when we were talking about they should fire Joe Woods, that's out of.
No, I think that was. Let me put it this way.
Yeah.
If Kevin, if Kevin wasn't speaking for Joe Woods, he might have been fired before the bye week. Now, in that particular case, Kevin does have say.
Yeah.
You know, whose coaches are going to be, but like Kevin, at the end of the day, was not going to be able to keep Joe Woods on. There's just going to be too much pressure externally and
But if
internally.
he wanted him fired, he would have been fired?
Yeah. I think if Kevin wanted to fire Joe Woods at the bye week, which I was wondering, before the Baltimore game, it was looking like it might happen because the defense was playing so poorly. You know, the defense from that point on actually played really well. It was the offense that completely cratered. So I think they saw enough in the Baltimore and Cincinnati game to say, okay, like, all right, we're going to roll forward with it, but it wasn't enough to save his job.
Let me ask you, do they understand where the pulse of the community is right today? Like, I speak to so many people, they come up to me, and there's people that I mean, we've been waiting forever, but there's people that say, I can't stand to see the Pittsburgh Steelers who don't have the same talent, they're running out Trubisky and rookie QBs. Some people feel like the Browns kind of punted on the season, and I think that the pulse of the community is, nah, he got about 4 to 6 games at the beginning of next year to figure it out, because there are people that I've never seen it go from that 2020 to 2023 and it lose like that. Do they know where they're at with their fan base?
Care?
Well, to the Haslam's credit, they're trying to do everything they can. They really do want to win. That's why they're paying the quarterback $230 million.
I'll give them credit for that.
Despite the
I agree with that.
accusations that were against him.
I agree with that.
They are trying. This is why they fire coaches and change quarterbacks. And I mean, they do want to win. But I do agree with you. Once they made that trade, the 2022 season was over. Now, I don't think they realized it at the time because they thought he was going to be suspended 4 to 6 games.
Right.
It became clear to me during the summer he ain't getting suspended 4 to 6 games. It's going to be a lot more than that. And
Groundswell.
on the flip side of it, I'm not sure that their record is any different based on what we saw from Watson if he only does get suspended 6 games.
That's true.
Because
Right.
of how well Jacoby was playing and how poorly Deshaun played when he got back. I mean, what game from week 7 to week 12 were they winning with Deshaun Watson instead of Jacoby Brissett? I think the record at the end of the year, which is crazy to think about, is exactly the same whether Watson had been suspended 6 games or 11 games.
I think that's fair. I think if he had not been suspended at all, it might have been different.
Well, yeah, for sure.
But based on what we saw, because it wasn't like by game 6, Watson was right there.
And they thought,
they
don't say this now, but they thought they were going to go on a run when he came back.
Yeah.
We all thought
We
that.
did.
deluded
I mean, I was
ourselves
hearing it
into
from
thinking
we beat Tampa.
Yeah.
We are getting ready to make a run. And it took one quarter of the Houston game. It's like, what are
You're
they
like, whoa,
talking about?
whoa,
Yeah.
whoa.
What are they talking
Right.
about?
Like the
This guy is
offense.
so far away from being where he needs to be for that to happen.
When it's funny, when the Browns traded for Watson, besides the off the field stuff, I was like, this is a no-brainer. The guy's a great player, great talent. You don't have a chance. The Browns have never had a great talent at quarterback. I never considered the fact, and bad job out of me and a lot of people probably, that maybe he's mentally scarred from everything that's gone on, a lot of it his fault, that he may never be able to get over that and become that dog that he was. Are you concerned about that?
I would be concerned if I were a Browns fan about that because they're not paying him to be the 10th best quarterback in the NFL.
No.
They're paying him to be the 2nd or the 3rd.
Right.
And the Browns, this roster, I've been saying like the best roster Deshaun Watson is going to play with is probably the one he just played with in 2022. It's going to get more and more difficult to deal with the cap ramifications of that contract and keep key guys on the team. I mean, you're going to have to make some tough decisions pretty soon here about, all right, well, like we can only afford this, so we're going to have to move on from that player. I mean, those decisions might not be this offseason, but it's coming pretty quickly because it's not just Deshaun. It's, Myles Garrett, it's Denzel Ward. They're paying out a ton of money. Joel Bitonio, Njoku, Wyatt Teller, Amari Cooper. I mean, they have a lot of big contracts.
And that's my concern. I've been saying this all year. We looked at the Browns' talent in the beginning of the year. We said a lot of talent. They do.
Yes.
I think we overrated. I'm not going to speak for you. I'm going to speak for myself. I think I overrated their talent a little bit as a whole. And what I realized this year is, if you compare it to some of the other good teams, let's look at this division with Cincinnati. The Browns may have more Tier 1 talent than the Bengals do, but the Bengals got way more Tier 2 and Tier 3 talent than the Browns do.
I even think the Ravens and the Steelers now have
the Browns
more
are a
of that
very
type of
studs and duds team, and I don't know that you can win that way. Now, if Watson gets back to being a star and plays out of his mind, then maybe. But
basically, it comes down to this: where the Browns going to be over the next 3 years? Is Deshaun Watson a top 5 quarterback? The answer is yes. They're going to be in the mix.
That's
if
right.
If not, they're not going to be.
It's a disaster.
That's And based on what we saw the 6 games, he has got a long way to go.
Long way.
It's going to be tough, to be 8th, 9th best in the NFL based on what we saw. But to get to the Patrick Mahomes level, which is what you need him to be,
right,
for that kind of money and the first-round picks they gave up, that's got a long way to go.
So do you,
not impossible,
Jake,
but long way to go.
Jake, so do you think that can occur if with Kevin just being the head coach and the OC? Do you think that can occur?
I think it can occur. I think Kevin's a good play caller. Now,
there's a difference between the two.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
So
there
like
is.
the CEO part of it is a different.
Yes,
but
it
in
is.
terms of like designing an offense that Deshaun Watson's going to believe in and thrive in, like I have confidence that that's going to happen.
Okay.
Now I don't know if Watson's going to be at the level in that offense to justify the contract. That's the question. But I mean,
You know,
Jacoby Brissett was 8th in the NFL in QBR.
yeah, but I mean, those are numbers.
No, but I mean, like Jacoby Brissett played the
He
best
played
ball
well.
of his life.
No, no,
Baker
I'm not
Mayfield, who might not be a starting caliber quarterback
What-
in the NFL, was 10th in QBR in
Would-
2020.
would-
We've seen Kevin take quarterbacks and elevate their game.
Would
before.
you agree that any player is only as good as the tools around him?
Yeah, I mean, there's some players that it doesn't matter; they carry everybody else.
Football would be pretty hard to do on a consistent basis.
I think there's one.
There's some quarterbacks that, like, you trade Tyreek Hill, it doesn't matter.
Right.
You know, but that's rare.
I think the scary thing for me is, is when you look at the composition of the AFC as a whole. And so we've sat here for a while and we've talked about what we got to have Deshaun Watson play top 5 football.
Right.
We got to have Andrew Berry hit on picks, and we can talk about his record, good or bad. And also, we need Kevin Stefanski to coach to a level that is with a Shanahan or Andy Reid. And then you got younger guys getting Jacksonville Jaguars look like they're coming on. You look at, and you already know what the three-headed monster is: Mahomes, Allen, and Burrow. So, you know, with the Browns, I asked the question, are the Browns more along the lines of the Jaguars and you hoping for a one-year flip, or are they a team that you might be talented like the Chargers, who kind of underperformed, or are you the Bills where you might have to rethink, hey, we need some more players?
I think if, without having given it a lot of thought, going into the 2023 season, I would say the Browns are like a fringy playoff pick. Like they're somewhere from 5 to 8.
It's so hard.
Right? I mean, you guys disagree?
Yeah,
No,
the way the
don't see
AFC
how you
is.
can.
I
the
don't-
Bengals, until proven otherwise, the Bengals, Bills, and Chiefs are the 3 best teams in the AFC.
So already you're at
so
4.
you're not going to really make a good argument for anybody else getting into the top 3 at the moment.
Correct.
It might change by next year, but at the moment, no.
The Ravens came up.
Clearly, as G said, Jacksonville is definitely on the rise.
They're on the rise. I mean, Baltimore, that defense with Lamar,
Yeah.
they're a legit team as well.
And like, it's not like.
And
Listen,
I'm telling you, like, nobody
Char-
wants to hear it here. Pittsburgh is they got 3 picks in the top 100. That defense is still the real
Yeah.
deal.
I don't believe in Kenny Pickett, but we'll see.
Evidently,
And the
turns into-
Chargers are not going to be bad. Like, even though the Chargers have been a disappointment,
The
they're still
Chargers
gonna be
had Super Bowl talent.
right. They still got a great.
They got to stay
quarterback.
healthy. They had terrible
The
injuries.
AFC's
this year.
tough.
It's
The
tough.
AFC's tough. But the bottom line is the Browns are really impossible to predict because we don't know what to expect about Deshaun Watson. If we get the same Deshaun Watson that we got last year, the Browns have no chance of making the playoffs. They're screwed. They're completely screwed. Now, I can't see him being that bad, but even if he's just
He's going to be better.
even if
he's
he's
gonna
just
be better.
middle of the road,
Yeah.
that's not going to be good enough. Not
Like
in
the
this
Browns have a
conference.
pretty wide variance
Yeah.
relative to the other AFC teams. Like
No doubt.
Pittsburgh, for example,
Gotta
I think
see
Pittsburgh's
him.
probably going to go 9-8. Like they just kind of find a way. I don't know that they could go 12 and 5.
Unlikely.
But I don't think they're going 6-11.
No, right,
The
right.
Browns could, like, if you told me the Browns go 6-11, I wouldn't be completely stunned. And if you told me they went, going to go 13 and I have to.
No.
Like, it's hard to add these games now that it's
Yeah,
17.
yeah.
13-4.
No,
I wouldn't
it's
be stunned by
not
that
crazy
either.
either,
They
no.
probably have the biggest variance of any team in the AFC going into next season.
Yeah. I mean, as
Chargers
of right now,
maybe, but again, the Chargers were hurt.
Yeah,
That's why
it's
they
not
were.
right.
No, but I don't even think so because I don't think the Chargers. I think
We know what
more
Justin
of these
Herbert
teams
is
are in a tight window.
more than what we know. We know what Deshaun
yeah,
Watson
no
is.
other team has a 7-8 game. Barring a massive injury or something weird happening.
Well, the position for the Browns is always good. The Browns went 3-3 in the conference. I mean, in the division, right?
Yeah.
They played Huntley and Trubisky, but
Right.
yes.
Yeah, but 3-3.
Yeah.
Right. And so the rest of the teams in the league and in the division went 3-3.
Yeah.
So you have something there. The question
They play
is,
their divisional teams
the
well.
The question is, can we put together enough oomph around? Because you need Deshaun Watson to be close to being the person we think he is.
They only have one lever to pull offensively, and that's they got to draft a receiver in the second round and hope he becomes the
There it
Schwartz.
is. I thank you for putting
Become the
it
who?
into
Really nothing
that.
Become the who?
Who they thought Anthony Schwartz was going
right.
to be. Like the guy that can take
Okay.
They didn't have anybody
To take
that
the
can
top
take
off.
the
They
top
They need
off.
to.
But,
they need to.
but they
be
don't have the
like-
resources because all the defensive holes to do anything else offensively. So the team you saw offensively, that's the team.
Right.
ideally you'd like to get a number 3 receiver that can play, but they're going to be able to do anything more than what they have. And they've got 2 Pro Bowl guards, a Pro Bowl running back, a pretty legit number 1 wide receiver,
Right.
a tight end that I was surprised how well he played this year. He's proven to be
But
worthy of that.
overpaid still.
Oh, yeah.
He's
Not
overpaid.
top 5, but he's top 10 tight end maybe.
Yeah, he's a
and I
solid
was skeptical of that before the year
Totally.
based on what we see. They've got enough offensively.
Jake, here's my concern when it comes to like Andrew Berry. I think overall, if you look at his transaction history, it's middle of the road, right? Like, and they've had some GMs that were horrible, so whatever. But I don't want to compare it to that. I think he's had some good, some bad.
Hits and misses.
When you look at what they've done in the front 7 on defense, it's been a disaster.
They have 1 starting caliber defensive lineman right now.
That's it.
They have one
it.
starting caliber front 7 player, I think.
JOK might be.
We had DeQuell Jackson on.
He's got it.
Oh,
JOK, if he can gain some weight back, I think we'll be okay. But
DeQuell Jackson said to
He
us
said
he
no
doesn't
way.
think he's a starter in the
He
league.
said no way. DeQuell
He
said
said
no
he's
way.
a third down player.
I mean, the
only.
problem too is that like their problems along the front got exasperated JOK's
Yes.
limitations as a guy that can.
Well-
I mean, the Atlanta game, they were just running wide zone right at him after
DeQuell-
every play.
Yeah, yeah.
And there's nothing that they could do to
And
stop
that's
him.
the thing, again, you look at their defensive tackles. Like, you can't have a great player in every position.
No.
But their defensive
gotta have
tackles
starting
are
caliber.
awful.
You
They're
gotta have
awful.
starting
They're not starters.
But
yeah.
to DeQuell's point was, I mean, there's basic skill sets inside a linebacker. DeQuell looks at him and said, he knows it. He said he doesn't have them.
Yeah.
He just doesn't have them.
JOK?
Yeah,
Yeah.
he said he doesn't have them. These are things that can't be taught. Either you have it or you don't have it.
We've
So-
seen JOK play well in certain matchups.
So my
right,
thing
yeah,
is,
But he might be more of a matchup
DeQuell said you should move off of him and keep going another way.
Yeah.
My question is, who's making the development of talent or understanding? Who's making the pickings? Who's doing the picking?
Who's drafting?
I mean, because
Yeah,
it's not
does
just
Barry have the
it's
final
just,
say,
it's just
or
not
is-
Barry. It is the people on the field, out in the field, who are going to look at talent and know what talent looks like.
Yeah,
Right.
well.
That's
Collaboration.
It is, and they do scout. It's not just all analytics,
Right.
but like Martin Emerson, for example.
Yeah.
That was a data
Home
guy.
run.
That was a data guy. That was not a scout guy. That was
Right.
that was an
And that was a
analytics
home run pick?
and
It was
a
a
good
home
pick.
run.
So
What about Donovan Peoples-Jones? I mean, that's an excellent pick right there.
I don't know like who was spearheading that one.
Yeah.
It was so long ago, but that was a home run pick.
But
you get
who
a guy
has
like
the final say? Do we know? Is there a final?
I mean, I think it's Andrew Berry, but again, it's collaborative.
Right.
Like Andrew makes
But
the
in
call.
the end, if let's say Stefanski and Berry and Jimmy and Deep Podesta all disagree, is Berry ultimately getting the final
I think
say or no?
it depends. Yeah, I mean Barry on personnel is going to have the final say, but like Deshaun Watson, Jimmy Haslam had the final say.
Right. Do you think Stefanski wanted him?
Yes, I think Stefanski. I think they
He was
all.
done. You think Stefanski was done with Baker, or
Oh, I think. I mean, it was. I thought Baker was done after that Pittsburgh game, and then by the time we got to the combine, everybody was kind of recommitting to it because they didn't have better options.
Right. Yeah.
But it definitely felt like whether they move on from Baker now or later,
it was coming.
It was coming.
It was
Right.
coming.
Jake, I think the scary part for me is it boils down to this. I think it's, when Steph Curry got rolling and the Cavs were doing their thing, the Cavs started tooling their team to say, we got to play the death lineup. We need to figure out the way to beat that team. We know what LeBron got. We know what Kyrie got, and we know we got 2 of the best, and nobody else can beat us but them, so we'll figure it out. My problem is, a fan asks us in the next 5 years, where do you see each team? And my problem for the Browns is, I know for the next 5 to 10 years, if you want to go to a Super Bowl, you got to beat 2 out of the 3. You got to either beat Mahomes and Burrow or Allen or some
you got
combination.
to be at least 2 just to
You
get
got to
to
just beat 2, and then you got to go see. To me, I don't know if they have the resources, unless he turns out to be Andy Reid. He goes to another level where he's McVay and he can scheme open, or Andrew Berry hits on 4 to 5 guys who are now All-Pro 4th round, All-Pro 6th round. A guy you got that some off a trash heap and he turned into something.
Right. Somebody know how to pick the best.
I mean, is
pick the fruits, the vegetables,
that
right.
a way to do it? Can they do it with their front office and coaching staff? Because I don't know if they have the resources to beat 2 out of 3 to go Super Bowl.
The Browns are unlucky in that their window came at a time where a bunch of other windows started to pop open around the AFC.
Yep.
And you had all these this run on unbelievable. I mean, this is the best the AFC's had at quarterback
yeah, no
ever.
question.
I think in my lifetime.
Yeah.
I
think
can't remember a time where there are more talented quarterbacks. And, if the Browns were in the NFC, think how different everything would look.
Yeah.
And you were talking about a Thunder fan who was going through the same thing in 2016.
Right.
The Thunder were going to win titles, or at least play the Cavs for them if it weren't for the Warriors.
Yes.
And then you have this,
Right.
generational team that came out of nowhere and nobody could beat them. And then, it's sometimes the luck that you're going to have some luck swing your way. Because it's going to be tough. I mean, the AFC is not going anywhere. These guys are, Joe Burrow,
This has been the most.
Herbert. I mean, they're all in their early 20s.
You gotta
This has
win
been the most
two.
unlucky franchise, I think, since the return of the Browns. I mean, I had never seen it with buzzer's luck. I mean, this is buzzer's luck. I mean, nothing seems to go right.
Jay, let's wrap it up with this. Right in the beginning of this conversation, you talked about, hey, there should be players stepping up and telling Jadeveon Clowney, we ain't having this nonsense. And that's right. The problem is, it seems from our perspective, we've talked about this a lot, that the best players on the Browns are, at the very least, they're not vocal leaders, right?
Yeah.
Like, they don't have that ass kicker on the team who's going to, like a TJ Watt, like a Joe Burrow, who's going to grab the other guys and say, what the are you doing? Myles Garrett, Nick Chubb, great players. They don't
Amari
seem to be that type
Cooper,
of
Silent.
They're not that type of guy. Do they have anybody like that?
Not on the defensive side.
Yeah.
John Johnson talks, but I think it's hard when you're not playing well and being that guy. Like, they really, in an ideal world, you'd want Myles to be that guy. But
Right.
Myles, in a defensive Myles, when he was drafted by the Browns, like, there was nobody showing him how to be that guy. There was nobody who was on the defense that,
Nobody.
He was instantly the best player on the team. And then you add in that his personality is not to be that type of guy.
Right.
And I couldn't believe how much they missed Anthony Walker on and off the field. Like, that injury, when it happened, I was like,
Right.
he's not that great of a player. They'll be
Right.
fine. They've got other linebackers. And it was a catastrophic injury for them in hindsight, because Anthony Walker was a guy that people listened to.
Yeah.
And he was a pretty good player on the field for what they needed.
Is Myles Garrett or Nick Chubb or even Bitonio, are these guys frustrated? Like, did any of them want out?
I haven't heard that. No.
Okay.
No, I don't think we're to that point. You would understand why they would
Sure.
feel frustrated. I mean,
Yeah.
I think there have been times where, like, Bitonio's been frustrated just by some of the nonsense he's had to deal with over the years, especially in the locker room.
Yeah.
But no, I think everybody's committed to making this work. It's not like people are trying to bail out, but they got their work cut out for them.
Do the players believe in Stefanski? Do you believe?
I think Deshaun Watson does, which is the most important part.
Oh,
He is all in on Stefanski. No, the moment he's not, Kevin's going to be in trouble.
Yeah.
But Deshaun Watson and Kevin Stefanski have a pretty good rapport.
Yeah.
So that gives you at least some optimism.
What's the plan for Watson this offseason? What is the deal? He's staying here in Cleveland?
He's going to be here. So, I think they'll have, I don't know if he's going to go to the Bahamas again, but I'm sure they'll have some kind of trip.
Right.
He's going to get together with Amari and throw. He's going to be here some. He's got a civil trial coming up in Houston, so he's going to have that. Yeah. So it's going to be another eventful offseason, it looks like, for the Browns.
Jake, great stuff. We really appreciate
Thanks,
taking
guys.
the time to
Awesome,
come in.
man.
Thank you.
Awesome. Appreciate
Excellent
you, man.
insight from Jake Trotter of ESPN, man. Mikey, what do you got for us?
No, it's great stuff, Jake. We appreciate you coming in.